Well, it's spook season. Do you know what that means? It means I got an excuse to gush about things that go bump in the night. Outside of the usual rigmarole. It's time for those stories designed to jumpstart those chills that are gonna be running up and down that real nice spinal column you got there. The problem is, what stories to pick. I personally love the serious and the campy aspects of the horror genre, but a lot of people lately seem to be looking for something in the more extreme arena.
Only the scariest of tales to tickle the old spooky bone.
So how about we take a look at some of the most vile, disgusting, decrepit, ghoulish, rattling tales to ever be told. Stories so dangerous to the general public that they were removed from circulation. Of course, I'm suggesting we take a look at some of the old horror comics from the 50s. That's right, I bet you didn't know I was secretly the Crypt Keeper. But here I am, sitting in my chair, getting ready to spook ya. So for tonight's 3 chilling tales, we're going to take a look in my personal copy of 4-Color Fear, which is a great little collection of comics banned for their overwhelming sense of spookiness. It's a really fun read, be sure to give it a look. So here we go. For the first item on the docket this evening, a tale of unwanted visitors, romantic rebuffal, and necromantic subterfuge. We have our main characters, Dan and Joyce, newlyweds, coming home to a very strange bit of news that apparently Dan's romantic rival, Henry, ended up offing himself after losing to his opponent, apparently, because that's what relationships are. And so, in an effort to reconcile with the dead, Dan and Joyce visit the cemetery, where upon visiting, a heavily decomposed Henry decides to claw his way out and try to put the moves on Joyce one last time. However, Dan is there with a nice left hook to put the rattly boy in his place. Shortly after a brisk jog home, because no one runs in their Sunday best, they lock the door and find Henry waiting for them in the living room, who has decided that he's going to become their new lodger. Dan does not take very kindly to this, and proceeds to pump him full of lead. This does not do anything, for he is a zombie, or a ghost specifically, as he's described in this story. He then proceeds to chuckle about, "You can't kill what is already dead, for I am ghost." But the question remains, who was Foam? Henry decides that he's going to stay and ruin their marriage, because why not? He has nothing better to do. Dan and Joyce proceed to go collectively insane following such horrible tricks by the Phantasm, as the playing cards being changed to skeletal figures, a skeleton being put in the clothes closet, ooh, and his nightly attempts at becoming a rock and roll icon. Later, after who knows how many meals, Henry reveals that he has been inside of the icebox and replaced the coming month's meals with human flesh. But they shouldn't be too upset, he seems to have planned all the way through the winter. After this, Dan decides he has had enough and confronts Joyce, telling her he has located a voodoo priest who is willing to paralyze the ghost with voodoo poison. They pawn Joyce's jewels for the juice, and then proceed to give it to Henry in his juice. In the final moments before becoming completely paralyzed and returning to the form of a stiff, Henry attempts to explain his situation, but succumbs to the paralyzing agent and is promptly placed back in the crypt where he belongs. However, it is revealed through an inner monologue that Henry actually dressed up as a zombie, or ghost, apparently, in an attempt to ruin Dan and Joyce's marriage, like he said he was going to do, besides the whole Party City aspect. And so he ended up becoming buried alive. Number 2 on the agenda is titled death sentence, where shock pulls the switch. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you it is very wordy, so be ready to sit down for the 5 pages of glory that is microwaving a clump of malignant cells multiple times over and being, a mad scientist who thinks this is a grand idea. You then proceed to tell your best friend about it because he's the only person that'll talk to you. And what do? You blast it with even more radiation because you've already proven that this is making it bigger. So we gotta run more tests. Needless to say, the cancer's growth decides that it's not fond of the My First Mad Scientist playset being misused like this. And so in an act of aggression towards the mad scientist, Mustache Twirler, it decides that he would make a good portion of it. So like the blob, it just kind of absorbs him. His best bud does not like this and tries to leave, but then he's like, oh wait, no, this is going to get even bigger, right? And so he starts using every tool in the lab to try and get rid of this thing, but clearly he is not the best suited at dealing with this situation. Finally, he decides on a flamethrower, the go-to weapon for this type of situation. Always remember, if it's growing by eating things, you might want to burn it with fire. Burn it with fire never sounded so good. All of this is being told to a very famous news reporter just before the best friend, who has been accused of murder of the mad scientist man who likes to microwave random cells, gets put on death row. As the reporter leaves, he's flogged by other reporters because now we have paparazzi for paparazzi. Rounding a corner, the reporter reveals himself to be a portion of this mass which somehow escaped and ate a cow. So yeah. For the third and final tale in tonight's expose of the extreme, we give green horror. We join George and Martha on their way back from a trip to Mexico. Joyful vacation as they drive the Batmobile home. Along the way, Martha decides that these cacti that are along the roadside would look very good in her garden, and so she asks George to dig one up so that she may plant it at their homestead. After it goes up, George decides that he really does not like it, and it's looking at him funny, and he doesn't care for it, and he thinks that his wife likes the cactus more than him. So he proceeds to attempt to take a swing at the plant, but Martha comes out just in time and stops him, and calls him out for being so rude to the plant that he just got done installing. Later that night, George steps outside, admitting to himself that he is jealous of the plant and wishes that he too could be planted by the feet, and proceeds to raise an axe to the thing, which promptly swipes the axe away from George, giving him ample time to run in terror before it embeds the axe in his back. Like the mighty Thor. Martha steps outside and sees that her dearest plant-hating husband has been murdered with an axe, and so she calls the police. Time skip to several months later, and Martha has a new boy toy, Brent, who is here and also does not like the cactus. He is on George's side. The cactus almost strangles Brent to death, but Martha looks up before it can do such a thing, and so it returns to its former post. Once Brent is alone with the cactus and stares at it, he's like, okay, I don't like this thing. Once Brent, who looks vaguely like Vincent Price, gets a chance to examine the cactus fully, it examines his neck thoroughly and strangles him to death. Once the life is done being choked out of Brent, there's a knock at the door. Martha opens it, and the cactus has decided that it wants its chance at a nice family sitcom special, so it hugs her to death. One can only imagine the sick thoughts going through the mind of the cactus. Cactus Log. The strange creature has taken a liking to me. I shall attempt to replicate the warming embrace of their species to the best of my ability. The warmth of the desert sands are nothing compared to the warmth of friendship. and murder. And that concludes our story time for the evening. If you liked these spooky tales, be sure to check out Four Color Fear. I'm pretty sure it's still in circulation. Well, once again in circulation. Because they were banned back in the day. If you liked this video, be sure to hit like, be sure to subscribe, and throughout this spooky season, be sure to check out other talented content creators like the Digital Nugget, who was so gracious as to invite me to play a video game with him. I'm not good at those, but I gave it my best. But do go check out his videos. I will link them in the description. And that's pretty much it.